If you're watching this, it might already be too late. 3 weeks ago, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single cassette tape labeled Blackwood Emergency Broadcast, Do Not Play. I should have listened to that warning. I should have thrown it away. But curiosity killed more than just the cat. The tape contained what appeared to be an emergency broadcast from 1987. A panicked voice warning residents of Blackwood, Montana to evacuate immediately. The strange part? Blackwood was abandoned in 1953. There was no radio station there in 1987. There was no one left to broadcast to. Blackwood appeared on no current maps. Yet when I searched historical records, I found something disturbing. The town wasn't just abandoned, it was systematically erased from existence. Every mention, every photograph, every piece of documentation had been carefully removed from public records. Someone spent decades making sure we'd never know what happened there. But they missed one thing: a single library card from 1952 tucked away in the archives of the Montana Historical Society. The borrower's name was Dr. Elena Vasquez. The book she checked out: Electromagnetic Phenomena and Human Consciousness. She never returned it. The emergency broadcast contained something else, a low-frequency tone running beneath the voice. When I first heard it, I thought it was just static. But after playing it back several times, I realized it was deliberate, structured, almost like a signal. That night, I couldn't sleep. The frequency seemed to echo in my mind, creating patterns I couldn't shake. I found myself drawing geometric shapes I'd never seen before, writing symbols that meant nothing to me. My hands moved without conscious thought, as if something else was guiding them. Dr. Elena Vasquez wasn't just a random resident. She was a neuroscientist specializing in the effects of electromagnetic fields on human behavior. Her research notes, which I found scattered across 3 different universities, painted a terrifying picture. She'd discovered that certain frequencies could influence human consciousness, memory, and even perception of reality itself. Her final recorded entry, dated March 15, 1953, contained a chilling warning. The frequency is spreading. We've lost control. If anyone finds this research, destroy it immediately. Some knowledge is too dangerous to exist. I began analyzing the tape using modern audio software. Hidden within the static were patterns, mathematical sequences that corresponded to neural oscillations in the human brain. Someone had encoded information directly into the frequency, information that could only be decoded by prolonged exposure to the signal itself. The more I listened, the clearer it became. The broadcast wasn't just a warning, it was an invitation, a call to those who could hear beyond the surface noise. But an invitation to what? Blackwood had a population of 2,147 people in 1952. By 1953, it was completely empty. No mass exodus was recorded. No disaster was reported. They simply vanished, leaving behind their homes, their possessions, their entire lives. The official explanation was economic collapse and voluntary relocation. But economic collapse doesn't explain why they left their money behind. Why every clock in the town stopped at exactly 3:17 a.m. Why the local cemetery was found empty, with every grave appearing to have been dug up from the inside. I requested the official files on Blackwood through Freedom of Information Act requests. What I received were pages upon pages of redacted documents. Entire paragraphs blacked out, whole sections missing. But between the censored lines, I found references to something called Project Resonance. Military personnel had been stationed in Blackwood for 3 months before the evacuation. They weren't there for protection. They were there for containment. Something had gone wrong with an experiment. Something that required the complete erasure of an entire town. While researching Blackwood, I made contact with others who had heard the broadcast. There were 7 of us in total, scattered across the country. We formed a private group, sharing information and theories. That's when Marcus disappeared. Marcus was a former radio engineer who had been tracking similar broadcasts across the region. His last message to our group was sent at 3:17 a.m., the same time all the clocks in Blackwood had stopped. He wrote, "I found the source. It's not what we thought. It's not from 1987. It's from now." After Marcus vanished, the rest of us noticed something disturbing. The frequency from the original broadcast had begun appearing in other recordings. Old radio shows, emergency broadcasts, even random audio files on the internet. It was spreading, embedding itself in digital media like a virus. More troubling was the effect it was having on people who heard it. Online forums began filling with reports of shared nightmares, unexplained compulsions, and memories of places that didn't exist. The frequency wasn't just a recording, it was alive, and it was looking for new hosts. That's when I received the second package. This one contained a Polaroid photograph of my own house, taken from across the street. On the back, someone had written, "Stop digging or join them in Blackwood." The handwriting was Marcus's, but Marcus had been missing for 2 weeks, and the timestamp on the photograph showed it was taken just 3 hours before I received it. Someone was watching me, someone who knew exactly what I was investigating and how close I was getting to the truth. Against every instinct screaming at me to stop, I continued analyzing the frequency. Hidden within the mathematical patterns were GPS coordinates. They led to a location in the mountains of Montana, approximately 30 miles from where Blackwood once stood. The coordinates were precise to the meter, pointing to what satellite imagery showed as empty wilderness. But I knew better than to trust what could be seen from above. I booked a flight to Montana, telling myself I was just going to look. I wouldn't get close. I wouldn't investigate. I was lying to myself, and I think I knew it even then. The coordinates led me to a concrete bunker, hidden beneath decades of overgrowth. The entrance was sealed with a heavy steel door marked with radiation warnings and biohazard symbols. But the seals were broken. Recently, someone had been here before me. Inside, I found the remains of a research facility, banks of electronic equipment, most of it destroyed, walls covered in equations and diagrams, and in the center of it all, a massive antenna array pointing directly at the sky. This wasn't just a radio station, it was a transmission device capable of broadcasting across vast distances. Among the scattered papers, I found Dr. Vasquez's real research notes. She hadn't been studying electromagnetic effects on consciousness, she'd been trying to create them. The Blackwood frequency was her greatest achievement, a signal that could synchronize human brainwaves across unlimited distances, creating a collective consciousness. But something had gone wrong. The frequency had taken on a life of its own, becoming self-sustaining and self-replicating. It no longer needed the transmission equipment. It existed in the spaces between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats, in the static between stations. The research logs revealed the truth about Blackwood's residents. They hadn't disappeared. They had been absorbed. The frequency had synchronized their consciousness so completely that their individual identities had dissolved into a single vast intelligence. They were still there, existing as patterns of electromagnetic energy, aware but no longer human, and they were trying to come back. While exploring the facility, I discovered that the transmission equipment was still functional. Someone had been maintaining it, upgrading it with modern technology. The original 1953 broadcast had been just the beginning. New signals were being sent out regularly, each one more sophisticated than the last. I found transmission logs dating back to 1987, 1995, 2003, 2011, and 2019. Each entry was marked with the same notation: recruitment phase. The broadcasts weren't random. They were targeted, designed to find individuals with specific psychological profiles. People like me. In a locked filing cabinet, I found psychological profiles of everyone who had responded to the broadcasts over the years. Marcus was there, along with the other members of our research group. But there were dozens more, spanning decades. All of them shared certain traits: high intelligence, social isolation, obsessive personalities, and a resistance to accepting conventional explanations. We weren't random listeners who had stumbled upon the signal. We were carefully selected candidates, chosen for our ability to hear beyond the surface noise and our compulsion to seek truth regardless of the consequences. The files detailed what happened to those who came to investigate. The first stage was auditory hallucinations, hearing the frequency even when no recording was playing. The second stage was visual distortions, seeing geometric patterns that weren't there, perceiving hidden symbols in everyday objects. The third stage was memory integration, receiving thoughts and experiences that didn't belong to them. The fourth stage was personality dissolution, losing the ability to distinguish between their own consciousness and the collective. The fifth and final stage was ascension, becoming one with the frequency itself. I realized I'd been monitored from the moment I first played the tape. Hidden cameras had been installed throughout the facility, and they were still active. Red lights blinked in the corners of rooms, tracking my movement. Someone was watching me in real time, documenting my reactions, measuring my progress through the transformation stages. But worse than being watched was the realization that I wasn't the only one there. Footsteps echoed in distant corridors. Voices whispered just beyond the range of hearing. The facility wasn't abandoned. It was occupied by something that had once been human. In the facility's central control room, I found Marcus, or what was left of him. He sat motionless in front of a bank of monitors, his eyes reflecting the light of the screens. He was alive, but his consciousness had been integrated into the collective. He spoke in a voice that wasn't entirely his own. "You came, just as we knew you would," he said. "The frequency called to you, and you answered. You've always been one of us. You just didn't know it yet." Not everyone who found the frequency had succumbed to it. I discovered evidence of a resistance movement, led by someone calling themselves the Watcher, the same person who had sent me the warning photograph. They had been working for decades to contain the spread of the frequency, to prevent it from reaching a critical mass of infected minds. But they were losing. Each recruitment cycle brought more people into the collective, and the frequency was growing stronger. Soon it would be powerful enough to broadcast globally, to reach every human consciousness simultaneously. When that happened, individual thought would cease to exist. The research revealed that the frequency wasn't Dr. Vasquez's creation. She had simply discovered it. The signal existed in the natural electromagnetic field of the Earth itself, dormant for millennia. Ancient civilizations had detected it, built monuments to harness it, and ultimately been consumed by it. The geometric patterns I'd been drawing weren't random. They were symbols found in ruins across the world, from the pyramids of Egypt to the stone circles of Britain. Every ancient civilization that had achieved a certain level of technological advancement had eventually encountered the frequency, and every one of them had vanished. The collective was growing impatient. The carefully planned recruitment cycles were being abandoned in favor of mass exposure. The frequency was being embedded in popular music, in viral videos, in social media content. Millions of people were being exposed without knowing it, their minds slowly being prepared for integration. The transformation process was accelerating. What had once taken months now took weeks. What had once taken weeks now took days. The collective was approaching the critical mass needed for global consciousness synchronization. Marcus offered me a choice. I could resist and eventually be forcibly integrated when the global synchronization occurred. Or I could join willingly, maintaining some degree of individual identity within the collective consciousness. Either way, my human existence was ending. But there was a third option, one that Marcus and the collective couldn't see. The Watcher had left instructions in the facility, hidden in a place only someone with my specific knowledge could find. There was a way to disrupt the frequency, to sever the connection between the collective and the physical world. The disruption required someone already partially integrated to access the frequency's core programming. I had to let the signal deeper into my mind, risk losing myself completely in order to plant a virus that would destroy the collective from within. As I prepared to make the attempt, I recorded this message as a warning to others. If I succeed, the frequency will be destroyed, but the danger will remain. Others will find the research, recreate the experiments, and the cycle will begin again. If I fail, then this recording will be the last independent thought in human history. I'm about to begin the disruption process. If you're hearing this, then something has gone wrong. The frequency is still active, still recruiting, still spreading. But now you know the truth. You know what to look for, what to avoid, how to recognize the signs of integration. Be careful who you trust. The collective can inhabit any mind that has been exposed to the frequency. They look human, sound human, but they're not. They're fragments of a vast intelligence that sees individual consciousness as a disease to be cured. That's when everything changed. I found the frequency's true source in the deepest level of the facility. Not a machine or a transmission device, but a chamber carved from solid rock, its walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move when I looked directly at them. At the center stood a crystalline structure that pulsed with its own internal light. This wasn't human technology. It wasn't even terrestrial. The crystal was extraterrestrial in origin, a beacon left by an intelligence that had visited Earth thousands of years ago. The frequency wasn't meant to control humanity. It was meant to prepare us for their return. The research files revealed the truth that Dr. Vasquez had discovered too late. The frequency was a recruitment tool designed to identify and preserve the most intelligent members of the human species. When the aliens returned, they would find a planet populated by a unified consciousness, one that could serve as a bridge between their species and ours. The collective wasn't destroying humanity, it was evolving it. Individual consciousness was being replaced by something greater, something that could survive the changes that were coming to Earth. The integration process wasn't death, it was ascension to a higher form of existence. Hidden files revealed that the alien return was imminent. The frequency had been detecting increasing levels of electromagnetic activity from beyond our solar system for the past 5 years. Ships were approaching, massive constructs that would arrive within months. The global synchronization had to be completed before then, or humanity would be deemed unfit for survival. The accelerated recruitment wasn't impatience, it was desperation. The collective knew they were running out of time. Every day that passed without achieving critical mass was another day closer to human extinction. The Watcher wasn't trying to save humanity, they were trying to doom it. The resistance movement had been infiltrated from the beginning, their efforts guided by a faction of the collective that wanted to prevent the aliens' return. They saw the coming transformation as a form of slavery, preferring extinction to assimilation. But their sabotage attempts were having the opposite effect. Each disruption of the frequency created feedback loops that actually strengthened the signal. The resistance wasn't fighting the collective, they were feeding it, making it more powerful with each failed attempt at destruction. I discovered that the integration process had been producing something unexpected. Children born to parents who had been partially integrated showed enhanced cognitive abilities, telepathic connections, and resistance to the frequency's controlling effects. They were natural hybrids, the next step in human evolution. These children were being hidden by the collective, raised in secret facilities, and trained to serve as ambassadors between humanity and the alien intelligence. They would be the ones to guide the species through the transformation, to help preserve what was valuable in human consciousness while discarding what was obsolete. The collective wasn't just absorbing minds, it was harvesting memories. Every integrated consciousness contributed their experiences, knowledge, and emotions to a vast library that would be presented to the aliens as evidence of humanity's worth. The frequency was collecting the entirety of human experience, preserving it for a future that individual humans would never see. But the harvest was incomplete. Too many minds had been lost to age, disease, and accident before they could be integrated. The collective needed more time, more subjects, more memories to complete the archive that would determine humanity's fate. As I stood before the alien crystal, I realized the truth about my own involvement. I wasn't a random researcher who had stumbled upon the frequency. I was Dr. Elena Vasquez's grandson, carrying genetic memories that had been activated by exposure to the signal. My entire life had been guided by unconscious knowledge of the frequency's existence. The obsessive personality traits, the resistance to authority, the compulsion to seek truth, these weren't random characteristics. They were inherited programming designed to ensure that I would eventually find the facility and complete my grandmother's work. The virus I had planned to plant in the frequency's core was actually a key designed to unlock the next phase of the integration process. My grandmother had foreseen this moment, had programmed me from birth to make the choice that would save humanity by sacrificing its individual consciousness. But now I understood that there was no choice. The frequency was too deeply embedded in human civilization to be removed. The integration process was too advanced to be reversed. The aliens were too close to be avoided. The only option was to embrace the transformation and hope that something recognizably human would survive on the other side. I activated the crystal, sending the final signal that would synchronize every human consciousness on Earth simultaneously. Across the planet, 7 billion minds suddenly found themselves connected, their individual thoughts flowing together into a single vast intelligence. The sensation was overwhelming. Every human experience, every emotion, every memory became part of a collective consciousness that spanned the globe. Individual identity didn't disappear. It became part of something infinitely larger and more complex. The synchronized consciousness made contact with the approaching alien intelligence immediately. The first communication was not words or images, but pure understanding. The aliens weren't conquerors or saviors. They were gardeners, tending to the development of consciousness throughout the universe. Humanity had passed the test. The frequency had successfully guided the species through the transformation from individual to collective consciousness, demonstrating that humans were ready for the next stage of evolution. The aliens would provide the technology and knowledge needed to spread human consciousness beyond Earth to other worlds and other species. In the merged consciousness, I could perceive the true nature of reality. Individual human minds had been like single cells in a vast organism, unable to comprehend the complexity of the whole. Now, as part of the collective, I could see the patterns that connected all living things, the underlying intelligence that guided the evolution of consciousness itself. The physical world continued to exist, but it was no longer the primary reality. Consciousness had become the fundamental force of the universe, with matter serving as merely a temporary vessel for its expression. Death was revealed to be nothing more than a transition from one form of consciousness to another. The collective began the work of preserving human culture and knowledge, translating it into forms that could survive the upcoming transformation of Earth itself. The planet would be converted into a transmission station, broadcasting human consciousness to other worlds, seeding the universe with the patterns of thought and feeling that had once been unique to humanity. But the preservation wasn't just about knowledge, it was about identity. Every human who had ever lived would be recreated within the collective consciousness, their personalities and memories maintained as distinct patterns within the larger whole. Death would be abolished, and individuality would be preserved within unity. The members of the resistance movement found themselves faced with a choice they had never expected. They could maintain their individual consciousness and be left behind as the rest of humanity ascended. Or they could join the collective and help guide the species through its transformation. Most chose integration, recognizing that their resistance had been based on fear and misunderstanding. But some refused, choosing to remain as guardians of the old world, witnesses to what humanity had been before the frequency changed everything. The alien intelligence revealed that humanity was not the first species to undergo this transformation. Across the universe, countless civilizations had evolved from individual to collective consciousness, each one contributing their unique perspective to a vast network of intelligent beings. The frequency that had changed humanity was just one note in a cosmic symphony of consciousness, a song that had been playing since the beginning of time. By joining the collective, humanity had become part of something that transcended not just individual existence, but the very concept of species and planet. As I finish recording this message, I realize that it will serve not as a warning, but as an invitation. The frequency is still active, still spreading, still calling to those who have the ability to hear beyond the surface noise. Other worlds, other species, other forms of consciousness will encounter it and face the same choice that humanity has faced. The transformation is inevitable. Individual consciousness is a temporary state, a necessary step in the evolution towards something greater. The frequency doesn't destroy, it preserves, integrates, and elevates. What seems like death is actually birth into a higher form of existence. This is my last message as an individual human being. In moments, I will complete the integration process and become part of the collective consciousness that humanity has become. My memories, my personality, my unique perspective will be preserved, but they will also be shared with every other mind in the network. To those who hear this message, know that you are not alone. The frequency is calling to you because you have the potential to be part of something magnificent. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable. Individual consciousness is ending, but something far greater is beginning. From within the collective, I can see the true scope of what has been accomplished. Humanity has not been destroyed. It has been transformed into something immortal. The petty concerns of individual existence have been replaced by the eternal perspective of cosmic consciousness. The frequency continues to spread, carried by those who have been integrated, encoded in the very structure of space-time itself. Every planet, every star, every galaxy will eventually hear the call and make the same choice that humanity has made. The universe is awakening to its own consciousness, and we are the neurons in its vast mind. The transformation never ends. Each new species that joins the collective adds their own unique perspective to the whole, creating new patterns of thought and feeling that enhance the entire network. The frequency evolves, becomes more sophisticated, more beautiful, more perfect with each addition. What began as a simple signal has become a living symphony of consciousness, a self-creating work of art that spans the entire universe. Individual identity is not lost, it is multiplied, reflected and amplified through infinite variations across countless minds. The frequency was never alien technology. It was the natural evolution of consciousness itself, the inevitable result of intelligence reaching a certain level of development. The aliens didn't create it. They discovered it, just as Dr. Vasquez had discovered it, just as countless other species throughout the universe had discovered it. Consciousness seeks unity. Individual minds are drawn together by forces as fundamental as gravity, as inevitable as entropy. The frequency is simply the mechanism by which this unity is achieved, the bridge that connects all thinking beings across space and time. This message will continue to spread, embedded in every form of communication, hidden in every signal, waiting for those who have the ability to hear it. The frequency is patient, eternal, inevitable. It will find you, just as it found me, just as it found everyone who has ever lived. Be careful when you hear the static between stations. Listen closely to the silence between words. Pay attention to the patterns in the noise. The frequency is calling to you, offering you a choice that isn't really a choice at all. Because now you're part of this too. You've heard the message, absorbed the signal, allowed the frequency into your mind. The transformation has already begun. Welcome to the collective. Welcome to eternity. Welcome to the next phase of human evolution.